everyone! Welcome back to Johnny's Keep It Real podcast. Today we're diving into the wild, wonderful world of Willie Nelson, one of country music's most iconic legends. Whether you know him for his outlaw spirit, his signature braids, or that unmistakable voice, Willie's got a story that's as colorful as his bandanas. So, grab a coffee, or maybe something stronger, and let's unpack some fascinating facts about the red-headed stranger himself. Alright, let's get started. First up, did you know Willie Nelson didn't start out as the country superstar we know today? Born on April 29, 1933 in Abbott, Texas, Willie grew up during the Great Depression. His family was poor, but music was always around. He wrote his first song at age 7. Most of us were still figuring out how to tie our shoes. By 9, he was playing guitar, taught by his grandparents who raised him. That early start set the stage for a career that spanned over 6 decades. Pretty wild, right? Now, here's something that might surprise you. Before he was a performer, Willie was a hitmaker behind the scenes. In the early 60s, he moved to Nashville and started writing songs for other artists. Ever heard of Crazy by Patsy Cline? Yep, that's a Willie original. Or how about Hello Walls by Farron Young? Another Willie classic. He was churning out hits while still trying to make it as a singer himself. But Nashville wasn't quite ready for his unique style back then. Too polished a town for a guy like Willie, I guess. So what did he do? He said, "Forget this," and went his own way. That brings us to the outlaw movement, maybe the coolest chapter of Willie's career. By the 1970s, he'd had enough of Nashville's rules. He moved back to Texas, grew out his hair, ditched the suits for jeans, and teamed up with folks like Waylon Jennings to create the outlaw country sound. Albums like Red-Headed Stranger in 1975, total game changers. It was raw, it was real, and it was Willie being 100% himself. Fun fact. That album was recorded on a shoestring budget, under $20,000, and it's now considered one of the greatest country records of all time. Goes to show you don't need big money to make big art. Speaking of going his own way, let's talk about Willie's love for, let's call it herbal inspiration. He smoked with presidents, well, allegedly with Jimmy Carter's son on the White House roof, and he even launched his own cannabis brand, Willie's Reserve. He once said, "I think people need to be educated to the fact that marijuana is not a drug. It's a flower. Love him or not, you've got to admire the guy's consistency. He's been preaching that gospel since the 70s. Okay, here's a wild one for you. Willie's no stranger to trouble, especially with the IRS. Back in 1990, the taxman came knocking, saying he owed $16.7 million in back taxes. Most people would have panicked, but not Willie. He recorded an album called The IRS Tapes, Who'll Buy My Memories, to help pay it off. And fans rallied to buy his seized stuff at auction just to give it back to him. By 1993, he'd settled the debt. Only Willie could turn a tax disaster into a folk hero moment, right? Now let's talk about his guitar, Trigger. If you've seen Willie live, you've noticed that beat-up acoustic with a giant hole in it. He bought Trigger, a Martin N20, in 1969 after his old guitar got smashed. Since then, it's been his ride or die. Over 100 artists like B.B. King and Johnny Cash have signed it, and Willie says he'll retire when Trigger does. Considering he's still touring at 91, that guitar's got some serious mojo. One more fun tidbit. Willie's a black belt. Yep, you heard that right. He earned his 5th-degree black belt in Gongkwon Yusul, a Korean martial art, back in 2014 when he was 81. So not only can he write a killer song and strum Trigger like a legend, he could probably take you down in a fight. I don't know about you, but I'm not messing with Willie. All right, before we wrap up, let's give a nod to his heart. Willie's been hosting Farm Aid since 1985 to support American farmers, raising over $60 million so far. He's a rebel with a cause, and that mix of grit and kindness is what makes him so special. And that's our deep dive into Willie Nelson. Songwriter, outlaw, pot pioneer, and all-around legend. What's your favorite Willie story or song? Let us know. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, this is Johnny, keeping it real.